Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I'm speaking about the next episode from Season 4, The Big Brother. If you're enjoying these, please do hit like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you'll know when I post a new segment. This episode was written by John McGreevy and directed by Ralph Waite. John and Olivia are going to Newport News. John has found out that there's an opportunity to bid on some lumber for a big contract over there, and so he's all getting ready and getting his best suit and everything to go on this trip. And the question is raised about potentially Olivia going, and so they decide that would be a nice opportunity for both of them to get away together. As all of this is being talked about, I noticed that both Mary and I were doing homework or something, or reading or writing, and it made me think about having been asked by one of you viewers when we were writing, or when John Boy was writing, what were we writing? And so as I saw myself writing, I thought, well, I'm clearly really writing, but who knows what I'm actually writing? And I have no idea. Sometimes it'll be scene related. Sometimes I could be writing a poem. I could be writing nonsense words. Who knows? Jim Bob has been disappointed in a little young crush. And so I love this shot that Ralph did, the way he constructed this shot where we're shooting through the tire swing as Jim Bob throws rocks at this carved bird that he had given to this young girl who rejected it and rejected him. And we sort of start seeing the nature of John Boy, which is always to try to help and to guide, advise his brothers and sisters. And John Boy is trying to give Jim Bob advice. Jim Bob isn't particularly interested in it, but it is in John Boy's nature to try to care for. So when John Boy drops John and Olivia off at the bus station, and then he encounters a young girl who appears to be lost. Her mother theoretically was supposed to be on the bus and didn't get off the bus, and John Boy's big brother nature kicks in, and he just can't leave her stranded there. So he decides that he's going to take her home so that they can she has a place to stay for the night, and then he'll bring her back the next day to see if her mother's on the bus. Very early on, we as an audience are sort of clued into the fact that this young girl, Muffin, played by actress Vicky Schreck, is not all she is professing to be to John Boy, because she's sort of seems to be sneaking around. She seems to eye John Boy and John and Olivia, and sort of like she's setting up her target. And when John Boy suggests getting help from the sheriff, she has all the story about why not. I thought it was also different to see John Crawford, who played Ep Bridges, sporting a little bit of a goatee, sort of a beard with some gray in it. That's the only time I ever remember him having any sort of additional. I think he had a mustache maybe, but never a beard. Once at the Walton house, all of the children, everyone's asking Muffin questions as they're feeding her, and everybody's just fascinated by her story and where she came from and how tough it must be, that her mother's seems to be missing, and she has this stepfather who's bad news, and Grandpa, meanwhile, is kind of sitting off on the sidelines, kind of watching, like he is the only one who's not quite buying this whole innocence act. We see Muffin in the barn, and we get a glimpse into her actual character as she makes a nasty comment to the cow. What are you looking at? She has a suitcase with her, and as it is open, we see all sorts of stolen goods, multiple watches, pocket watches, things like that. It's a little bit different dynamic between Grandma and Grandpa, because often we think of Grandma as the one who is distrustful and not sure about things, and in this case and Grandpa is the one kind of going, oh, relax, just, and in this case, it's the opposite, where Grandma's trying to say, how can you not believe that poor innocent child? And Grandpa saying, I think there's more to her story than what we're hearing. Meanwhile, in the bigger city, John and Olivia, you see John looking out a window. In this case, we see his point of view. He's looking at the Silver Slippers, some dance parlor across the street that has flashing, strobing sort of lights. And then we see the shot of him, and we see that sense of those lights. Those would have been two completely different shots, because the exterior thing, seeing the dance hall, would have been shot at one point, and then probably interior, the sound stage, they would have shot that of John in the window. So they just would have created that that parallel light effect to make it look like that those actual lights that we saw were the ones that were then bouncing off of him. They are trying to go to sleep, because they're of course used to going to sleep very early, because they get up very early. But there's noise, and Olivia's like, what's everybody out there doing at this time of night? And they talk about that they're maybe going to get up and get dressed and go dancing. And so it's just fun to see that side of their relationship. The story develops as John Boy takes Muffin back to check out whether her mother's on the bus again. We see her sort of scoping things out. She sees John Boy talking to the Baldwin sisters, and we get the sense that she is indeed setting up her next mark. Meanwhile, inside the sheriff's office, the sheriff has someone in one of the jail cells. This is Nifty, a longtime con artist. And so we start beginning to put some of these pieces together. When the Baldwins come out from an errand they had, Muffin bumps into them, dropping and breaking a bottle, and she gives them a whole sob story about how it was medicine for her little brother, and how she's going to what's she going to do now? And the Baldwin sisters, of course, give her money. So she's a clever little con artist. Her next action is to go to the sheriff and say that her Sunday school class has baked cookies for the unfortunates, and so he agrees to let her go take cookies to the prisoner, and we find out that Nifty is her grandfather, and that he needs $30 for bail money, or he's going to have to spend 30 days in jail. And she said she's working on it. She's got about half of it, and she's got some marks set up to get the rest of the money. So now we are fully educated on what exactly the objective is here. Having wormed her way into John Boy taking her back home, she is now working on getting the rest of the money from the Walton family, because she said she needs like $11 for her fare. And so they're going to help her get this money. And all the family is going to pitch in and figure out how to do this, because this is more important than other things they were going to spend their money on, because she has to get to her mother. And at this particular dinner scene, because John and Olivia are gone, we see that John Boy has taken John's place at the head of the table. Always interesting to see when characters move from their normal seats at the table. While the girls try to come up with more ways to raise money, Elizabeth starts to open Muffin's suitcase, and Muffin absolutely snaps at her, and she has to do some quick backpedaling to get them to forgive her and also allay any of their suspicions. But because we are basically trusting people and we don't have a reason to suspect her, we all forgive her. While Grandpa has been checking up on Muffin's story and finds out the address she gave them for where she's supposed to be going is actually smack in the middle of the city dump, there's clearly contradictions. Meanwhile, Muffin and some of the Waltons have gone to Ike's store, where Mary Ellen's selling some walnuts to Ike. And then, because she still needs more money, Muffin offers to sell this amethyst ring that was her mother's. And they sort of convince Ike that he should buy it for Corbeth, because amethyst is Corbeth's birthstone. But then Muffin manages to accidentally knock over the walnuts, and when they're picking them up, she discovers that the gem in the ring setting has fallen out. So they're all looking for it. They can't find it. She's heartbroken, and Ike agrees to buy the ring because he said, I'll find it, it's fine, I'm gonna buy it. So she has successfully managed to con out of all these wonderful people the money supposedly for her bus fare, which is actually the bail money for her grandfather. Jim Bob is a little smitten with Muffin and actually offers her the bird that the other girl rejected, and Muffin just thinks that's so lovely and she accepts it. They are about to take her to put her on the bus when the Baldwin sisters arrive. And of course, Miss Mamie and Miss Emily recognize Muffin as, how's your little brother and is he okay? And so now the gig is up, and Muffin takes off running and we see John Boy take off chasing her. And I love here this shot of Richard just, leaping over this fence, which is just, it was great. I was like, oh, go Richard. John Boy does catch up with her and confronts her on the whole thing. And she gets very, very nasty with him about how people believe what she says and that made him feel good and that she was just giving people what they wanted. And, he's buying none of that. So he's like, no, you're going to the sheriff. And as they're gathering things together to go, she's still trying to play Jim Bob. She sort of convinces him that he can help her. John Boy goes to pick up John and Olivia from the bus station and is turning Muffin over to the sheriff. But Jim Bob has stowed away in John Boy's rumble seat and then helps Muffin to escape, basically. And she steals John Boy's car, and the sheriff and John Boy and John, they go racing after her. And John Boy had been in need of a new tire, and he gave up some of that money for Muffin for her bus fare. So now the tire has gone flat, which was a good thing because that means that now he has his car back and he just has to have the tire changed. So Muffin and her grandfather managed to get away, but the Waltons at least did not fully get conned out of their money. I really liked in the final narration that Earl says, that even though it happened, that if in the future he were to come across a young girl that seemed to be in need of help, he would likely once again offer his help. And that to me just speaks of character, that we can go through our life being suspicious of people and keeping them at a distance and distrusting and not helping. Or we can look for the best in people and sometimes we'll be disappointed. But for me, I'd rather look for the good in people than to be suspicious of people, because I think that we're going to come across more good people in our life than bad people. That's what I have for you for this segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons about the episode, The Big Brother. And I must say that it was wonderful to have John Boy, Richard Thomas, as a big brother throughout my life. I'll see you next time on more Behind the Scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.